time for the Ron and Brian podcast. Get ready to fill your ears with the latest news, politics, current events, and whatever else we feel like talking about this week. And now, your hosts, Ron and Brian.
All right. Good evening, everybody. It is Sunday night. It's 8 o'clock, and it is time for episode 263 of the Ron and Brian podcast. I am Ron, joined by one of the few passengers of the submersible called my heart, Brian. Brian, how are you this evening, my friend?
You know, I'm going to say emotionally spent.
Okay.
That is how this has been a week where I feel like we missed out not doing an episode every night. I feel that there was enough going on in the world this past week that we would have clearly had an hour of content every night this week.
It was a roller coaster of news stories, not just submersible stories. There's a lot of news out there. So I guess the only thing to do is to just dive right into things with Drink of the Week.
Drink of the Week.
Na zdrowie.
Salud.
Drink of the Week.
Sláinte.
Drink of the week. Drink of the week. Drink of the week.
Brian,
Yeah.
what did you bring to drink this week, my friend?
Oof. Listen, I felt like this was the kind of week where no amount of beer was going to properly show homage to the people that we're going to be talking about in the next hour. And there was only one thing that I could do, and that was to crack open my box of Macallan Quest 12-year Scotch single malt whiskey. It looks like this in the bottle. But first off, let me tell you a little about it, Ron.
Please do.
The Macallan Quest, it pays homage to the entirety of the journey taken by the Macallan to source the best oak across over 20,000 miles, concluding with the selection of 4 different but complementary casks to deliver a single malt whiskey that creates a genuine expectation of further exploration and enjoyment. And you may say to yourself, come on, Brian, it's just a whiskey. How can it speak so full of life and the experience? American bourbon casks are combined with hand-picked sherry-seasoned European and American oak casks and hogsheads to deliver a character of fresh flavors of citrus fruits and sweet vanilla oak. Depicting a blue sky, Quest represents the start of a journey where the world is a canvas and the sky is the limit, and it's going in my belly. So what we are looking at is the color is a pale gold. The nose, soft citrus fruits, rounded apple and lemon, vanilla sweetness, and subtle oak. The palate will be apple mixed with ginger and dried fruits, but the finish will be of great length. It will be soft, light fruit, medium sweet, coming in, packing at a 40% ABV.
Wow.
Why's my head shaking like Harry Carey? Hey, I don't know. Anywho, the nose is Jewish. Wow, that's really anti-Semitic, Janelle. I love that. Nose is Jewish. My drink of the week, the Macallan Quest.
Listen, it is always something special when you break open your box. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you think of this.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's good. I have not had I could just literally right now, right in this general area, it's just warmth. It is warmth radiating through my body. It's going to be a crazy after dark. I'm going to be slurring.
Nice.
I'll be breathing whiskey breath into my girlfriend's neck as I fall asleep tonight.
Nice.
It's going to be a beautiful world.
All right.
Beautiful world. Ron,
Yes, sir.
Ron, what are you drinking?
So I went local again this week. Dug into the beer cabinet and pulled out something from our friends at Workhouse Brewing Company out of King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. We have had a few of these on Drink of the Week prior. This just happens to be their American Pilsner. And Brian, their mission, simply put, is to make sure your beer is made right. We take a no-nonsense approach to classic beer styles that are broadly appealing and consistently delicious. So clocking in at 5.2%, it's crisp, it's floral, it's spicy, it's their American Pilsner. And it's a beautiful looking beer. I mean, that's how I want my Pilsners to
Ooh.
look. Let's take a sip here.
It's cloudy for a Pilsner.
Oh, but it's so good, Brian. It's smooth,
Talk to me.
It's crisp. It's floral. It's crushable, extremely crushable, as we know. We like our beers that way. But good stuff, nonetheless.
How many of these do you have on hand? You say that they are crushable. We've got a long night ahead of us. Allie making a reference that it is going to be a 3-hour After Dark. People, we've got After Dark. How many of these beers do you have lined up?
I mean, I have many beers, Jerry, in the beer fridge. I only actually had one of the American Pilsner left, so I'll just have I'll have to switch it up.
All righty. I think it's going to be a doozy.
Certainly is. Up next, it's Beef of the Week.
Ron and Brian's Beef of the Week.
Brian, what's bothering you this week?
Okay, Ron. What's bothering me? We're going to talk about when fast food does not deliver all the items that you have ordered.
Okay. Is it fast food specifically, or is it a delivery system like DoorDash or?
Oh, no. This is placing an order online. I'll tell the story.
Sure.
On Friday, my boss sat there, pulled me aside in the office and said, "Hey, I've got a great idea. We've got, some people in the office, and why don't we order lunch for the office?"
Very nice gesture of him.
What a great idea.
Yeah.
And then I immediately looked around and I realized that he was just staring at me, and which meant that he was nominating me to place this order, pick up the order, and bring back.
You were voluntold to make this happen.
Oh yeah. And I confirmed that with him verbally.
Okay.
I wasn't going to take on that responsibility without it being, verbally confirmed that this was something I was supposed to be doing. So we ordered, placed the order online from a local fast food place that specializes in chicken.
Okay.
Various chicken nuggets, chicken tenders, I guess you would call them, chicken sandwiches of different types.
Would June be a month that this restaurant does not necessarily favor for some reason?
Possible.
Okay.
Possible.
Just asking.
But the thing, so I went around the office getting everybody's order. Basically, people asked for certain types of sauces. I said, absolutely, don't worry about it. We are going to get plenty of the signature sauce that this establishment is known for. No, Janelle, I will not mention their name. I will not. They have not deserved it. So, unfortunately, with this place, when you're there in person, the very rare times I'm there, you usually can just say when placing your order, "Oh, just give me a couple of these and a couple of those." When it comes to the sauces, and they're very good with, very generous. When you're ordering online, you have to open up each individual item and add the different sauces you want for each item. You can't just say at the bottom, "Give me 10 of these, 2 of these, 4 of those." No. You have to open it. So each order of fries, each order of nuggets, each order of sandwiches, I'm sitting there, I think you can get 2 sauces with each order.
Gotcha.
So it took me a while. Walked to the establishment on Fulton, picked up my order. The woman said, "Oh, you can make sure, everything's in there." I was like, "Hey, I trust you. You are spreading the gospel." Also, the bag was just so packed that there was no way that I was going to sit there, open it up, and look at each item. It didn't make sense. When I get back to the office and I open it up, There were no sauces.
Mm.
To say that I went from being popular, hey, Brian's here with lunch. He's in the conference room. Everybody go get your lunch, to we have no sauces and you'll have to eat your chicken nuggets dry because Brian didn't bring back the nuggets.
Brian didn't
I
check
took the
bag.
heat.
Yeah.
I took the heat for that one, but it is the food establishment's responsibility to deliver the things that I ordered. They failed. That is my beef of the week.
I understand. I mean, would you say that you shoulder a portion of responsibility for not checking the bag for sauces prior to departing?
Okay. I would say that if I had ordered one item, two items, I would
Okay.
say that it would have been reasonable for me to open up the large bag,
Right.
plural, to go through them and make sure that they had what I had ordered. I was dealing with 3 large bags of items. It did not, it was unfeasible for me to open it up and make sure that everything was in there, including sauces.
Understood. I'll give you that. And again, if you're placing that large of an order, and usually Chick-fil-A, the place potentially that you went to, their customer service.
Matt, edit that out, please. Ron, start again. Let's just go back. I'll count you in. 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. Normally, that chicken restaurant that you went to, very good customer service.
Agreed. Had I ordered from a McDonald's or a Burger King, I would have stood there as they were packing to count the items as they were going in. But this place this was the first and last time that they have let me down.
Understandable, my friend. Understandable.
It hurt. Ron.
Yes.
What's bugging you?
It's something that has it's raised its ugly head on the show before, Brian, but my beef this week is intellectual property theft. As we all know, we are currently in the midst of Hot Podcaster Summer.
Hot Podcaster Summer.
This is something. Is this our 3rd year doing Hot Podcaster Summer?
Hot Podcaster Summer.
Well, this is 2023. I know we did in 2022. I know we did Hot Podcaster Summer.
Hot Podcaster Summer.
And we definitely in 2021 did Hot Podcaster Summer.
Hot Podcaster Summer.
And I remember the day in 2020, we were all wearing masks. There were refrigerated trucks filled with body bags, filled with
forklifts bringing the bodies out. Yes, I remember all that.
But it was a different time on the Ron and Brian podcast because it was our inaugural Hot Podcaster Summer.
Hot Podcaster Summer.
So we are again in the midst of this. And what do I receive from? I receive an email from Cameo, the website Cameo. We all love Cameo. Use Cameo. Friends of the podcast has used Cameo. And what is that email entitled? But it is entitled Hot Cameo Summer. Just a cheap ripoff of Hot Podcaster Summer.
Hot Podcaster Summer.
So we have had our legal team send over a cease and desist. We are still waiting to hear back, but it's tiresome to see our content continuously stolen and used in other mediums. Brian,
question: did we use our in-house counsel, William Esquire, to
he recused himself because of how big a fan he is of Hot Podcaster Summer.
Hot Podcaster Summer.
So he felt that there might be a conflict of interest.
So was that letter written by our in-house legal team of Matt Beaker, Esquire?
So Matt found somebody who he said had a legal background. So we'll see how effective that was.
It wasn't Troy McClure by any chance, was it?
It was Lionel Hutz, I believe.
That's it.
Wrong Simpsons reference, Brian. I'm very disappointed.
I'm lucky that I remembered it.
All right. Well, let's obviously everybody is talking about, well, they're talking about the Brian stickers, which went out to our Patreon folks. Brian stickers are currently sold out, people. That is how popular they were. So we are working on another order. I have also received word from one of my manufacturers that another piece of test merch has been mailed out to me. So hopefully I will have it in time for next week's show. Very excited about this. But we obviously wanted to talk about the entire Titan sub situation that unfolded over the past week. We talked about it. We broadcasted last Monday night, and we talked about it. And Brian, I don't know about you, but I've learned a lot over the last week. I've learned about water density. I've learned about GPS. I've learned about tensile strength and compressive strength. I've shockingly learned that Blink 182 apparently still tours. But I think the biggest thing that I have learned is the bulk of the population hates billionaires.
I believe, yeah. I if I can tag on top of what you just said,
Of course, please.
the thing for me about this past week was the true crowning ascension of TikTok as the social media pioneer.
Right.
In terms of real time, not just memes, not just entertainment, humor. First off, it is really a great place of dark humor where you are not seeing the same types of humor that you're getting on Instagram this past week. Facebook is still offering me content of people going out for dinner. Whereas when I click on TikTok, it literally is people laughing about how the orcas were able to feed themselves Five Guys this week without having to eat any hamburgers. Like TikTok truly shined this week as the go-to place for social media. And, as you were saying, the amount of content that it was delivering of, just people, just it having a moment of just glee at the idea that there was a submersible that was lost in the water. This is prior to the later just utter joy that all these people perished. But it was just how fast this content was delivered, how smart, how ingenious a lot of it was. This was the week to me that TikTok really took first place.
I mean, my For You page at one point was just constant sub talk, just one after the other.
Yes.
And again, some of it was news related, some of it was, memes, and some of it was just really dark shit. One of the ones I liked, and you're talking about, like Facebook and Instagram, like one of the TikToks talked about how in 5 years, people who watch Instagram Reels are going to be shocked to find out about this. Like, and it's true. Like, it's like TikTok is where I think people go now for that kind of instantaneous pop culture / news buzz.
Sure. I mean, there are genuine accounts there where it is just your average person who is broadcasting. They are broadcasting their own version of the news. Obviously everything should be taken with a grain of salt, but the level of research that you can see in some of these accounts is just wild.
Yeah. And also, who knew James Cameron, apparently an underwater sea expert as well?
I know. It was wild. And yet apparently, he is, he's been down to the Titanic. What is it? About
30 times, I think they said.
About 30 times this guy's been down there. Obviously, he was quite vocal about his skepticism regarding the Titan and Ocean Gate Expedition's efforts in going down to the Titanic. Just listening to him, you sat there and you immediately were like, he would have found a way for Leonardo to not drown. He would have James Cameron would have found a way for Leonardo to get on that door.
You think so?
Yes. Jack, not now, Jack.
So we already talked last week about how neither of us would forget the Titan submersible. I don't know that any of us would have gone in any kind of vehicle down to the wreckage of the Titanic. Like, I just don't have that kind of risk wish. But
Hold on. Let me ask you a question. But
Yeah.
do you have the desire to?
Not really. No.
I am fascinated at the concept of getting into something. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the amount of anxiety, panic, claustrophobia the level of it would be just anxiety inducing. Just and that's
Right.
even, I mean, but just the idea of being able to go down there and to actually see the remains of the Titanic, I would absolutely love to do it. However, I don't believe that I would be willing to risk my safety with the level of technology that they are currently using. I would rather, other people be the, quote unquote, the guinea pigs to try out these systems until it has been established that it's fairly safe. And then I'll give it a shot.
Well, and TMZ managed to get a hold of the waiver, the 3-page waiver that everybody going on the submersible have to sign. And it hits you right away on page 1. Number 2, a portion of the operation will be conducted inside an experimental submersible vessel. The experimental submersible vessel has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body and may be constructed of materials that have not been widely used in human-occupied submersibles.
Ooh, that's rough.
And then number 3 just happens to say is in there, could cause severe injury or death. And number 4, it says I could be exposed to property damage, injury, disability, or death. And then number 5, there are other things that could lead to property damage, injury, disability, and death. And then finally, I acknowledge that all travel in and around the water of vessels of any type, including submersibles, entails both known and unanticipated risks that could result in physical injury, disability, emotional trauma, death, harm to myself or third parties, or damage to my property. Like, reading that
would scare me away.
I think I'm going to pass. And
But you've done some things in your life that have, where you've had to sign some waivers to do.
I have, but I feel like the things that I've done were calculated risks. I don't know that you could call this a calculated risk because there were so many unknown variables about this thing. Again, because it wasn't safety checked by any of the organizations across the world that do that. It wasn't certified. It wasn't regulated. It was experimental, carbon fibers in there. I feel like, I've done some, I don't want to say dangerous stuff, but I've done stuff where I've had to sign waivers. I didn't think it really put me in death's way. This obviously very much so put people in death's way. Just seeing what's down that low in the ocean is just ridiculous. Like,
what I find utterly shocking is the listening to the quote unquote oceanic experts talking about the and I do not mean this as a cute pun, but the crushing pressure of the water at that depth of 12,000 feet below the ocean. And yet you've got places like, I believe it's the Mariana Trench,
right,
which is 30,000 feet below the ocean sea, and people have gone there.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the pressure, though. This is like some of the fascinating, people always need to give you relatable things. So like, apparently the pressure at that level is similar to a polar bear standing full weight on a quarter. Like, if the sub was a quarter, the polar bear would be the weight of the water pressing in around the walls of that.
Yikes.
And all it would take would be a crack in the fiber the size of half the width of a human hair to have that kind of catastrophic failure.
Run that by me again.
So all it would have
Half
taken,
the width of a human
half
hair.
the width of a human hair at that level of pressure, all it would have taken is to crack that minuscule for the hull to basically, implode.
Okay, we need to rewind a bit because
Okay.
we're jumping ahead to the actual implosion.
Sorry,
but
my apologies.
No, you don't need to apologize. This is, you're still 49% owner of this
All right,
show.
thank you.
But it is just the 3 days that were spent where everybody was focusing on this submersible that was, they had a general idea where it was. It was going
Right.
to be, near the, where the Titanic had sank. But if they had lost communication, apparently the company waited 8 hours to notify the U.S. Coast Guard that they had lost communication with the submersible.
Right.
Apparently that the technology on the submersible, can we just call it the Titan? It's a lot
Sure.
easier than saying the submersible. I don't like that word. I don't like saying that word.
It's fewer syllables. Just say Titan.
Titan. But it was just that, it was considered part of their, in terms of their operating procedures, it was considered normal to lose communication for a period of time with the Titan. So they were not unduly worried or concerned when communication was lost, and they allowed 8 hours to go by before reaching out. By that time, apparently, rescue efforts were immediately launched by the U.S., by Canada. I want to say Britain also
Very possible.
Britain's still, no matter, say what you want to say about Britain, still have a very strong Navy, still have very strong maritime operations.
And I believe one of the passengers was a UK citizen, so that would make sense.
Are we still going to rank the victims?
We can. I didn't know when you wanted to do that.
We could do that a little bit later. We're still
Right.
so it was just, I would say for 3 days, and it was the countdown of how of their remaining oxygen.
Right.
That there were literal websites and there were news channels that literally had in the corner of the screen, like right where it says file photo, right there was a countdown of the remaining oxygen. So it was like 38 hours, and you would just see it second by second clicking down, that everybody was sitting there waiting to see if they were going to be located, because there was a very strong theory about the possibility that they were just floating on top of the ocean.
Right. Or they were stuck attached to like the wreckage of the Titanic itself or something else underwater and couldn't get loose.
Now, the thing that during this period of time that was just so wild was how oceanic experts, and there's a term for them. I don't know what they're called.
We'll go oceanographers, perhaps.
Oceanographers. Okay, that's a good word. That's a word I'm good. Oceanographers. Oceanographers. They immediately started bashing the structural makeup of this of the Titan. Just immediately the articles, the interviews, the analysis of what I dare say flimsy seemed to be, kind of the consensus that, on other submersibles that are out there, across the world, that there are, so many safety features that are built in. There's so many electronics that are controlling this thing. And then you look at the Titan. I know that it's a running joke at this point, and I certainly don't want to pile on. But that this thing was being run by a PlayStation or an Xbox game controller.
It was a Logitech controller, and again, hindsight being 2020, and obviously the OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush won't really be able to regret his words now. But he basically during an interview last year said, we can get some off the shelf stuff, like their ballast was discarded construction piping, and they
Right.
used, they went to Campers World and bought some things, and they ordered the Logitech controller. But the hull, Brian, the hull they worked on with what NASA and University of Washington and all that, and like
I believe he
that's
also
where
said Boeing.
that's
Yes.
where all the technology went into.
And also was the beauty of the makeup of it was that the entry into the Titan was through a small hole that each person had to climb through,
Right.
but it was held together by about 17 screws that were then bolted in,
Right.
that were literally like Home Depot strength. Not to knock Home Depot strength, but if I'm going 13,000 feet under, in the water, I want some heavy duty stuff making sure this thing is sealed.
Right. And so apparently there were, and now I consider myself a bit of a submersible hull expert, Brian. So
You are.
it appears that there were two big challenges with what they had designed here. First off, apparently, if you look at a number of other submersibles that go to depths of this level, you will see that they are usually round. They are usually circular in shape because it is easier to control the compression of the entire unit when it's a circle like that. Like I guess the force is equal all around of it. This was more cylindrical, obviously,
Sure.
because this was a for-profit venture. So it was a cylinder so that they could fit 4 or 5 people in there. So rather than having that compression all around you, you had this structure where the pressure on the top and the bottom and the sides made it more challenging for that kind of development. And then in mixing the carbon fibers with the titanium, most of these submersibles are just pure metal because, number one, if you're just using the pure metal, it's stronger that way because you're not mixing it with something else. But you can also test the metal after every trip. You can't test these carbon fibers, and a lot of people are saying that is probably what caused the issue. Is that this wasn't the first time this thing went down. They apparently have made numerous
Multiple,
successful
yes.
dives to the Titanic before, but there was no way to test that hull to see if that carbon fiber, if the hull had been compromised in any way. And as we said, with it only taking a minuscule crack, you would never be able to really tell that. They and even James Cameron talking about it, like, the problem with that is that you can't test it to see if it has degraded. You can test steel. There are ways you can test steel to see if the composite of it has degraded to the point where it's no longer safe. With what they did, it may have been lighter. It may have been what they considered stronger, but it also had the issue of getting weaker each time it was used.
What it's just wild to me. And the thing is the fact of, a lot of people, within that world have stepped forward this week saying that, they had, either, been approached to, to go down, to be a passenger on the Titan. Some people had signed up, and as they had gone out, there was apparently in total was going to be an 8-day trip, starting from, when they were going to leave mainland Canada, including their time to where the boat was docked that would carry the Titan, as well as, going out into the ocean to, with the grounds of where the Titanic had sank. And then it was supposed to be, I believe in total, an 8-hour dive. It was going to take 2-3 hours to get down. You're going to be down there for another 2-3 hours, then back up for 2-3 hours. I think it was pretty much the way it was going to break down. But the number of people who have stepped forward to say, oh yeah, we bailed at the last minute because it was having some, technical difficulties, because, the weather was rough and, they didn't think that it was a smart idea. We did go down, we went halfway and then there was a problem when we came back up, clearly the science with, I can only speak to, the stories, you're hearing about the Ocean Gate, but clearly this is, not a tried and proven transportation.
Well, there were a number of passengers who talked about the communication issue, where they would lose communication during the trip. There was actually audio of one of the trips where there was an issue because one of the thrusters had been installed backwards. So it's so it's like, if that's the level of detail and checking that's going on, like that does I guess it shouldn't be surprising at this point that something like this happened.
But you have to give, you've got to give some credit, and you may not. You may sit there and completely disagree with me, but Stockton Rush, who was the founder and CEO of Ocean Gate Expeditions, the company that owned the Titan, operated it, whatnot, that he was not sitting in his fancy home in Silicon Valley, drinking his $1,000 wine while other people were putting their lives on the
Sure.
line. Going there, he was in that vessel. He was piloting it. This was up to $250,000 fee for each person to spend these 8 days. I'm assuming that the food was not Michelin rated.
I guess they
That
could
were
just bring,
feeding.
power bars and water and whatnot. But
Sure.
but this is the one thing, and Allie kind of touches on it, how they lobbied for lower safety standards, and then they Stockton Rush would complain how all these safety checks stifle creativity. But yeah, perfect point here. The moment that they realized there was an issue, well, let's call the government and have the government help us out. And there was even someone from Ocean Gate who criticized the government, where after they waited 8 hours to contact the government, they were upset because they couldn't reach someone right away. Mind you, this was a Sunday night going into a federal holiday, and they had waited 8 hours already.
Correct.
And then they're upset because the government just doesn't come to their aid right away.
Well, I mean, there is a sense of comfort and security that the Coast Guard does project.
Sure.
And in so many cases, as somebody who I will be honest, I have watched a ludicrous number of episodes of The Deadliest Catch. I'm not going to pretend otherwise.
All right.
It's I do know quite a few of the at least for the first like 12 seasons. I can name all the ships, the Northwestern, the Maverick, et cetera, et cetera. But each season they would have at least one episode, and possibly they would be featured, but it would just be the efforts. They would follow the Coast Guard rescue teams, who were based out, in Alaska, waiting for, Mayday calls, waiting for, calls from, the boats to sit there and say, hey, we've got a problem. Our engines aren't working. We're taking on water. There's a man overboard. Somebody needs medical attention. And the number, the way that the Coast Guard jumps into action is just was impressive. So I can understand to a certain extent the people at Ocean Gate sitting there thinking, well, we're going to make a phone call and the Coast Guard are coming out.
Yeah, they're just going to come and they're going to help us.
But there's a big difference between a boat on the ocean with communication gear working and a 12-foot submersible that's not communicating, and nobody has any idea where it is.
Sure. And this is what also, is interesting to me. And there was actually one of the anchors on MSNBC asked the question of one of the guests that she had on, is trying to calculate, what the cost of this rescue mission is going to end up being. Because, even though it was a number of different countries, like at the end of the day, the government somewhere is getting a bill for this. And is it going to be $10 million? Is it going to be $25 million? However much it is. And, the question she asked is, if this is a private venture,
Sure.
private citizens paying for a service from a private company, at what point do you justify the amount of money being spent on an effort that, at the end of the day, they were, odds are they were dead the moment they lost communication and tracking.
They knew the risks, Ron. They all
Sure.
signed that waiver. They
Oh
knew
no, I'm not even
exactly how
talking about
experimental
that.
it was.
I'm like, what else could we have used that? Let's say it's $20 million. What else could we have used that $20 million for other than trying to rescue people that put themselves in a dangerous situation?
Do you know how many missiles we could have sent over to the Ukraine?
A ton of them, Brian.
Do you know that $20 million we could have used as a tax savings to Amazon to open up a new distribution warehouse
That's what
in
I'm saying,
in
Brian. It could
Arkansas?
have gone that 20 million could have trickled down to the top 1%, which would have
Correct.
eventually ended up creating jobs.
100%. We could have given used that $20 million and given a tax break to SpaceX, for them to build a new launching facility in Texas. Just said to them, hey, don't pay taxes on that plot of land that you just bought. Here's $20 million. Like, there's so many better things we could have used with it.
Right. Now, as we mentioned earlier, we didn't see a lot of sympathy from the general public. I mean, and again, I have not seen the online community unite around things like they did this. Like, I would have to go back
glorious.
I'd have to go back
So
to like
glorious.
Harambe. Like, I think when Harambe was killed, everybody rallied around Harambe. I think these billionaires are the anti-Harambe.
Sure.
Because everyone really just kind of rallied around their suffering and death.
What Chris over here says the memes from this are outstanding.
Oh, without a doubt.
It was such a week of unification where you realize how many other people feel exactly the same way as you in terms of the class. I don't want to say the class war, because there certainly is not a class war going on. And if there is, it's being won by the rich. But the number of average Americans who took just the opportunity to ride the wave of exhilaration, laughing at the expense of five, we'll call them millionaires. You got, it costs on average $250,000 to go down. So these are not poor people.
Right.
Just knowing that these people, there were jokes about, what was going to happen if somebody had to fart. As these people were counting down their 96 hours of oxygen, did anybody decide that they wanted to, masturbate one last time before they died? What happened if somebody had to take a dump? Apparently
many questions. Many questions.
The bathroom facilities on the Titan apparently was just a plastic bag, and that you would
a little curtain that you pull aside.
Oh my goodness. But, okay, but now let's fast forward to, I believe, was it Friday or Thursday when the debris field was discovered?
It was Thursday.
Okay, so Thursday morning was when the oxygen was going to expire.
Right.
So the countdown. Everybody wakes up. Everyone wakes up on Thursday morning. Not everybody. Some people like to sleep late on until about 8:45.
Sure.
However, I'm up at like 5:45, ready to sit there, drink my coffee, watch some TV, and then you've got we're all sitting there at 7:00. Everybody's just like, whoops, guess the oxygen's out. They're all dead. And then to learn that they have discovered debris field, that there has been the discovery by, you mentioned the rescue effort, the different vessels that were in the water in that area looking to see if they could locate this vessel, that they were able to find, I guess it was three main pieces, which was the front cone, the back piece, and then there was, kind of the that center cylinder that you mentioned earlier, that they found all three pieces. I felt rather suspiciously quickly. I know, my brain immediately went to a place of, how is it took 100 years to find the Titanic, but they found this thing in 3 days? Well, and this was the part that I found really interesting, was that apparently the U.S. Navy has a sonar system in the Atlantic Ocean to monitor submarine use that they were actually able to register a series of noises when going back when the Titan actually went into the water, that they were able to they pretty much said that this noise was consistent with something imploding or exploding.
Right.
Like it was a loud noise. This wasn't whales humping. To quote Hunt for Red October, this was not a seismic anomaly.
No.
However, they kept their mouth shut for the 3 days. Well, the rest of the world was sitting there trying to, think about these poor people, losing air. Apparently, the Navy was like, "Oh yeah, they're dead. They're pretty sure they're dead." And what I thought was impressive was that through the technology they had, they were able to take the sound effects that they were hearing from the different sonar buoys and triangulate pretty much where the noise was coming from, and they communicated that to the rescuers and said, "Hey, you should look here."
Right.
And that's how they were able to find this thing within 4 days.
And they say now that they didn't want to release the information of the noise they had heard because noises are very tough. Noises are very tough to disseminate under the water, and they want until they found the debris field. Can I tell you the thing I heard about? And again, a lot of people talking about how implosion works, but Anderson Cooper had somebody on talking about it, and apparently the speed in which that implosion occurred was 1,500 miles an hour.
Jesus.
Like it happened in such in a fraction of a second.
Sure.
That the only good thing you can say is they never knew what happened, because your brain cannot register the speed in which this would have happened to them.
Do you think that so you're saying that, okay, I just want to recap this.
Sure.
That a crack in carbon fiber?
The hull.
The hull. Okay. So a crack in the hull, half the width of a human hair.
Correct.
Could have caused the structure.
Mm-hmm.
It could have caused the structure to fail, and an implosion would have taken place at 1,500 miles an hour.
Correct. It would have been a nanosecond that it would have collapsed.
Sure.
And they would have been liquefied. They would have been liquefied instantly.
They had no idea that it took place.
No.
Wow.
Which again, as opposed to running out of oxygen on the ocean floor, or even worse, floating on the top of the ocean and knowing that you're running out of oxygen, but there's 17 bolts holding you in, I go with instantaneous death.
Sure. This was, in all honesty, okay. I was going to say this was best case scenario, but no, that wouldn't age well. That would not. That would document very poorly if somebody were to quote me later on. But accepting the reality that these people were dead, this was the best case scenario.
Exactly. Now, we were kind of saying before there was a lack of sympathy, but we feel it's our duty as podcasters to kind of talk about, out of the 5, were there people on the Titan that you might feel a little bit sympathetic about, of most sympathetic to least sympathetic. So let's take a look at who was on this submersible. You've got Captain Hamish Harding, Paul-Henri Nargiolet, Stockton Rush, and then Shahzada Dawood and Suleiman Dawood. I'm probably not pronouncing that last name.
Well, okay. I'll let you start, Ron.
Well, I think so. Who do you feel who do you have the most sympathy for out of these 5?
I think, and this seems to be a universal approach, is that the most sympathy is going to Suleiman Dawood.
Without a doubt. The 19-year-old son, who apparently was terrified to go on this thing, but just went because his dad was apparently such a Titanic fan.
A Titanic. He was 19, a business student at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, which is Scotland. And I know Glasgow is in Scotland because Roddy Piper was from Glasgow. So that's how I know that he was, that we were talking about it. He had to be the most sympathetic. Apparently his aunt said that he had communicated to her that he was nervous about going on the trip with his father, based on how experimental it was, but because it was Father's Day weekend.
Yep.
He really wanted to spend it with his father, so therefore that's why he went along. And this kid got crushed to death at a speed of 1,500 miles an hour. So I think he starts off at your most sympathetic.
I would agree with you on that one. So we agree on most sympathetic.
Number one.
Let's jump
Who
to the
do you
bottom.
agree-
Let's jump to the bottom.
You're jumping to the bottom.
I think we want to. I think it's important for us to set the parameters and then kind of fill in the middle. Who do you feel is the least sympathetic out of this group?
I believe we have to go Stockton Rush.
See, I was thinking that. I almost was going to put Stockton. I'm going with Shahzada Dawood. And here's why. Number one, I think Stockton Rush honestly believed the work he was doing was good work. Like, I don't feel he, not that makes any difference, but I don't think he was being devious about things. But Shahzada.
No, hold on, and I'm going to disagree with you.
You're more than
he was
allowed
cutting
to.
corners. He was cutting corners in every way, shape, and form. He was broadcasting it and telling people that most of the safety features that everybody else was adhering to was just lunacy, and he didn't need any of it. And then he went out and he brought these 4 other people into the ocean with him on his experimental vehicle.
But here's the thing. Again, it wasn't like this was the maiden voyage. He had done this before. He had gone down. I'm not saying he is without reproach. I am just saying I don't put him as my least sympathetic. I put Shahzada because he made a decision for and his son to go down there, putting his wife in a situation to not only be a widow, but to lose her son at the very same time.
Are you kidding me?
Nope. I'm not kidding.
Ron, he gave her the greatest gift known to mankind, which is the inheritance. I don't know how wealthy he was. If according to the research that I did, he was a member of one of Pakistan's wealthiest families. He was a British citizen, had a background in textiles and fertilizer manufacturing. You know who enjoyed fertilizers? Was Timothy McVeigh.
I was going to say the Oklahoma City bomber.
Absolutely, Timothy McVeigh. Do you remember the name of the guy who he was working with?
Oh,
they were brothers.
Right.
And I can visualize him. Glasses.
Yeah.
Terry McNichol. Terry Nichols.
All right. Very good.
Was it Mick Nichols or Terry Nichols? Oh no, it was McVeigh. So it was Terry Nichols. Okay. So he
anyway.
Was,
back on track here. So you're saying Stockton least sympathetic. I'm going Shahzada. Who would you put at number 4 then? Because I would then put Stockton right at number 4. Least.
I've got Shahzada Dawood as the second least sympathetic because he decided he wanted to do something that was incredibly risky, and he did not sit there and say, "Hey, this is a decision each and every person needs to make on their own." Son, I'll see you when I come back. He sat there and pressured his son to go along with him.
All right, so we just basically have those two flipped around, but we're pretty close.
We're at that point now. We've got Harding and Nargiole.
So middle of the pack, I'm going Paul Henry. Just
how
come?
Well, which way are you putting him? Your second least sympathetic, or are you putting him your second most sympathetic?
Second least. So I'm putting him I put him right above Stockton Rush.
You put him right above Stockton Rush. So you're saying that he is not sympathetic.
Well, I say he's more sympathetic. He's kind of in the middle, is what I'm saying. I've got Stockton and Shahzada at the bottom. Obviously, Suleiman's number 1.
Sure. Okay. So you're putting Paul Henry number 3 or
Correct.
Number 2?
I'm putting him number 3.
You're putting him number 3. See, I've got him number 2 on my list.
Okay. And why is that?
Well, that's because I believe he seemed to be genuinely a Titanic obsessed individual. He had been down to the dive site, to the wreck site over 35 times. He actually was the director of underwater research for the RMS Titanic, which this part just made me weird, which was an American company that owned the salvage rights to the Titanic and displays many of the artifacts in the Titanic. So he pretty much had made the Titanic his life.
Right.
he was not sitting there profiting off of other people. He was not, necessarily a thrill seeker, in terms of the world. But the Titanic was his life, and he saw he was another opportunity for him to go down and see it, and he took advantage of it. I put him as the second least sympathetic person.
See, and no,
Excuse me, second most sympathetic person.
And that's why I put him in the middle. He'd already gone 35 times. He was a little selfish. He was a Titanic hog, if you will.
Ron, how many times have you been to the brewery that's right by the train station near you?
A number of times.
So you're being selfish. You're being selfish every time you go there. You're being selfish every time you go there because you just let somebody else sit at the bar.
So that means I'm putting Captain Hamish Harding as the second most sympathetic, right below Suleiman. You're putting him in the middle.
Correct. And for the simple fact that this guy was a thrill seeker, joyride, he was all about getting Guinness World's Records. He held one for the longest time spent traversing the deepest part of the ocean on a single dive. He actually had already flown to space on a mission with Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin rocket company. So here was a guy who literally was just a thrill seeker, an adrenaline junkie, did not generate a lot of sympathy out of me.
See, my only reason I get a little bit of sympathy is when I saw his stepson at a Blink-182 concert, and then also messaging OnlyFans models.
Oh my
Twitter.
God! So hold on. I didn't put two and two together. So Harding's son-in-law was the one that was at the Blink-182 concert.
Yes.
Oh my God!
His stepson was the Blink-182 kid.
Okay, so how is it that 56 minutes into this episode we're only now getting to talk about the kid on Twitter literally commenting on thirst traps?
Yeah, I think. Hold on, we can take this photo down. So yeah, he is Brian Sassy. I think.
Ooh, he was sassy this week.
Sassy. So apparently there was some online content creator who goes under Lexia, and she commented. Hold on, I gotta take the banner down real quick.
Take that banner down.
You can kind of see it. But she posts on
Twitter
and says, "Can I sit on you?" And it's just a picture of her in like some lingerie, and he responds by saying, "Yes, please," and then follows that up with a comment that says, "Please pray for my family."
Keep in mind, when this man types "yes, please" with some like cutie face emoji, his stepfather is lost in the ocean. Right. They don't know whether he's alive or not. And this guy's on Twitter commenting on thirst traps.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, it's just genius.
And now apparently he's taken his social media down. He's like, now I guess he feels bad.
Well, he took it down because he was just publicly humiliated. Prior to this post where he said, "Yes, please," he shared a photo that was taken of him outside of a Blink-182 concert where he was standing near the merch tent for some reason with a sign saying, it's a tough time for my family, but they would have wanted me to go to this concert.
Now, that also then led to another interesting line of conversation online as to what concerts would be acceptable to have to attend if a family member was, missing and possibly presumed dead.
Listen, the day that my dad died, I canceled on a concert. I was supposed to go to a concert that afternoon, and I could have gone and said, "Listen, he's not going to wake up. He won't know that I'm going to the concert." And visited him after, gone to the concert. But no,
this was a legitimate line.
I did the right thing, Ron.
This was a line of conversation people were having, like, all right, Taylor Swift, all right, you'd have to go to that concert. Like, no one was like, "Hey, you got to go to a Blink-182 concert." I think people agreed, like Taylor Swift, Beyonce, maybe Bruce Springsteen, like that level concert, it would be okay to go to if you had tickets and your stepfather was lost in the ocean.
But if you are a pop punk fan and Blink-182 was your favorite band, which my understanding is the case with this guy, they broke up 20 years ago or 15 or where the fuck it was. Nobody cares. Well, obviously this guy cares. So what am I rambling on for? And now suddenly they're playing San Diego or wherever he lives. This is a big deal for him.
Well, I feel he'd be able to get Blink 182 tickets at any city that they're performing in. And
Sure.
B, if you're the stepson of a billionaire, you probably can hop on a plane and go to their next tour date, and especially now you've probably got a windfall coming in because stepdad is under the ocean somewhere.
Well, I mean, based on the 1,500 mile per hour speed that carbon fiber is just being, crushed together, I'm going to say that his father's really nowhere.
That's the crazy, and also the temperature change. Apparently, like it gets as hot as the surface of the sun because of how fast that implosion happens. So even anything was left was probably just burned up at that point too.
But they found the pieces. I mean, meaning any
human remains,
carbon based, any carbon
any
based.
human remains.
Yeah. Well, I did give a lot of credit to the Coast Guard representative that was in charge of the press conference because he had such a great line in the when they were announcing that they had found the debris, and some news reporter sat there and said, what is the likelihood of us finding some, the remains of the passengers? And he said something about along the lines of, this was a catastrophic event, and the water is not very forgiving, in terms of the conditions down there.
Right.
And they tried to ask a question, the same question, just slightly different. And he answered it exactly the same way, which was just, I thought it was a very proper way to say, shut the fuck up without having to use those exact words.
Right. Another little tidbit I learned, Brian, water 1,000 times as dense as air. Just a random piece of information. That's why GPS doesn't work underwater, by the way.
Why? Because water is dense?
Because of the density of water, correct.
Oh. But then they use something down there to locate things.
They use sonar, yes.
Oh, so sonar is they send a sound, and when
Yes.
it bounces back, they can figure out the distance from the speed that it's traveling at.
Exactly. When I tell you I learned so much this week, Brian.
Now, where were you learning it?
I was learning it in the mainstream media, so maybe I need to question everything I've learned.
No, I'm not. Listen, I think that you, just like everything else, if you're trying to learn something, use multiple sources.
Oh yeah.
Be skeptical of certain things, but understand that there are genuine experts on things. A oceanographer is going to know a lot more about the bottom of the ocean than my UPS driver. I'm still going to listen to the UPS driver,
sure.
But I think one of the things that we've lost in America is the understanding that there are experts on things, and that when they speak, they speak from a place of knowledge and not just from a place of emotion.
Well, we've really done a deep. I'm not going to say a deep dive. We've really gone into this story a lot. We didn't even get a chance, and Ali touched on this here about the insurgency or civil war in Russia that seems to already have played out.
It's over. It literally was 12 hours, and it was an exciting 12 hours, people. Yesterday, the head of the Wagner Group, which was the paid mercenaries that Putin has been using as his personal army throughout the world, turned on the Russian military, sent their troops from Ukraine, from the front lines, turned them around and started driving into Russia. Were able to take over two main towns, two main territories. We're not only receiving no resistance from the Russian military or the Russian police or whatnot, but actually seem to be being embraced by the Russian population. And then out of nowhere, keep in mind, this thing had me enthralled yesterday morning in front of the television. And they were
apparently rolling up towards Moscow at one point.
They were 200 kilometers outside of Moscow. Out of a 12, my understanding was that it was like they were 800 kilometers when they started, and they got to about 200 when suddenly they announced that they were going to stop. Ali made a comment earlier about, why aren't we talking more about this? I think there's a lot more that's going to be coming out. I still think it has not been fully revealed or discussed as to why Prigozhin would suddenly announce that he's no longer angry at the Russian military. He has accepted exile to Belarus. This is a man who is a billionaire who was a nickname. He literally had $1 billion catering contract with the Russian government. He then went on to lead his own private army that was being funded by the Russian government. And then suddenly, within 24 hours, he accepts that he's basically going to give all of this up and go into hiding in Belarus. A lot of this just there's just too much that we don't know about to really be able to speak from a position of knowledge. So I think Ron and I, we kind of said there's really not much to talk about. I mean, it was an enthralling day. I hope that in the next week more comes out as to why he stopped. I mean, he has been quite vocal over the past, weeks about the lack of support that he is receiving from the Russian military, the lack of arms he's receiving, the lack of other supplies, food, whatnot. For they put the Wagner Group, on the front lines. They were probably having the most success in the Ukrainian war that Russia was experiencing. And, he really had, sat there and become quite vocal about the failure of the Russian military. And then he said that he had been attacked by the Russian military. And that's when he launched, this march into Russia. Just doesn't make sense that he would give up out of nowhere. But I don't know enough to sit there and, to say it's this or that. And I certainly am not going to jump on the plethora of conspiracy theories I've seen so far.
Well, and again, we put Matt on the Ron and Brian podcast private jet. He is on his way over to Belarus, and he's going to get us that information, and we'll talk about it next week. But I think the only thing more tense than the situation in Russia right now, Brian, is finding out, can any of our Patreon listeners beat me tonight in a game of wits? And we're going to find out, Brian, after dark. That's right. It is time for our monthly pajama party. And can you beat Ron? Brian, you have put together a list of 10 questions where our subscribers will come on. They will. I lost 2 months ago. You lost last month.
Janelle's been on a run. Janelle has been on a run. William Esquire, quiet. Allie, respectable, but Janelle's been on a run of late, beating us. There's a lot of pressure on you right now.
There is.
It is June. This is our June edition of Can You Beat Ron? There's a lot goes on in the month of June, so we always make sure that it's somewhat timely. But our After Dark pajama parties, always a special time. Last Sunday of every month, we invite our Patreons on. But even if you can't come on, sign up for the Patreon. As little as $5 a month. You get access to additional content. You get the audio file every week. We do, right after this show, we jump on over to Patreon. We go behind the paywall. We go behind the paywall. These are stories that YouTube was wouldn't necessarily find family friendly.
We talk about things.
We talk about things Zuckerberg and Papa Zuck wouldn't want us to talk about on Facebook. Twitch would be twitching. But we go behind the paywall. But it's also a way for you to help us offset some of the costs for this show. We've always said, listen, if you are in a war zone, if you are in a third world country being bombed by the Saudi Arabian jets, if you are in a submersible going down into the water, you should have free Ron and Brian podcast content. It's for everyone. It's for the world. But there is a way, this show is not free. There are costs that Ron and I incur. We do have to pay for Matt's rehab costs a lot of money, people. Certainly Ron and I would be in mansions if it weren't for Matt. But you know what? We don't hold it back against him because we support those who need our help.
That's right.
And along those lines, when when Ron and I say, hey, here's a way that you can get more value out of the show for $10 a month, which really 2 cups of coffee, not a lot. You get a link every Sunday that allows you to watch live the show we do. You get the video content of our After Dark, and then there are other tiers which earn you some swag, some tote bags, sweatshirts, this lovely coffee mug, which I use every week. Been drinking out of this for over 2 years. Not even a ding or a dent. I mean, the quality of this stuff,
it's good stuff.
Top notch.
Yeah.
Absolutely top notch.
All right. Well,
don't forget your Brian stickers.
That's right.
First batch already sold out. We will be bringing back batch number 2 of the Brian stickers. These things are perfect. You're going to be seeing them all over the place, people.
Well, thank you for joining us. This has been a submersible heavy episode. We'll get back to our more traditional, I guess, content next week. Again, unless we find out something, just shocking about the submersible. You did share that one TikTok with me that someone implied that they knew that they were in trouble because they had knocked the ballast off and were trying, but I haven't seen anything additional since then stating that they may have been aware of the danger that they were in.
You hope that they weren't, in all honesty.
You would hope not.
Listen, we rank them in terms of their sympathy factor. Truth of the matter is, considering the fact that these 5 people's lives were lost this past week, I think we can all just say that we hope they died instantaneously and had no idea.
There you go. All right. Anything else before we roll on out of here and get ready for After Dark?
Not at all. I just want to say I thank everybody who has watched this show, joined us live, as well as those who are going to watch throughout the week. It's a fun place to watch live. We get a kick out of the comments, the interaction, the community we got going on over there. But that doesn't make you any less of a fan for watching or listening later on in the week.
All right. Well, we appreciate you all tuning in. After Dark, folks. We will see you in a little bit for the pajama party. Everybody else, we will see you next week.
Thank you for joining us on the Ron and Brian podcast. We're live each week on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. You can find prior episodes, links to our social media, and everything else Ron and Brian at ronandbrianpodcast.com. See you